Back to the Future. Could it actually happen with a real time machine?
I was devastated. I thought if I could build a time machine that I could go back and see him again and tell him what was going to happen.
In 2022, a man who had been missing for nearly 3 decades appeared at the doorstep of a stranger in rural Ohio. He was carrying a wooden box. Inside were journals, circuit diagrams, damaged electronic boards, photographs, and notes that should never have existed. His name was Mike Markham. The last time anyone had seen him was in 1997. On the night he stepped into a machine he had built inside his garage and disappeared. When investigators arrived at the property, the garage was already gone. Burned to the ground, the concrete floor bore a 6-foot circular scar. Copper wires had melted into the earth. Transformers had been destroyed by extreme heat. There was no body, no remains, no evidence that Mike had simply walked away. Only one thing was left behind. A handwritten note concealed inside a metal toolbox. It's not about time. It's about how you see things. For nearly 30 years, the world believed Mike Markham had died in that fire. But then he came back. Older, hollowed out, exhausted, and carrying evidence. Not evidence of time travel, something worse. Something that makes time travel seem simple. Because according to Mike, the machine did not send him into the past or the future. It altered his relationship with reality itself. And what happened to him during those missing years is why this story must begin at the moment he first discovered the thing he was never supposed to understand. The discovery. Mike Markham did not come from a university laboratory. He had no government funding, no team of physicists checking equations and telling him when to stop. He was simply a man from rural Missouri with an obsession that had stayed with him since childhood: electricity. During the 1970s and 80s, Mike was the kind of kid who dismantled anything he could get his hands on: radios, appliances, motors, old televisions. He collected parts from junkyards, studied electronics books from the library, and built machines that sparked, hummed, and sometimes failed violently. To most people, it seemed like a dangerous hobby. To Mike, it was a language. And sometime in the early 1990s, working alone in his garage, that language answered him in a way nobody expected. He had built a Jacob's ladder. 2 metal rods forming a V-shape, high voltage running between them. A bright electrical arc climbing upward before breaking and starting again. Nothing exotic, the kind of device used in classrooms and demonstrations. But one night, Mike added something strange: a cheap laser pointer. He positioned the beam so it passed through the rising arc. At first, nothing happened. Then the sound changed. The electrical hum tightened into a different pitch. The arc steadied. It pulled inward on itself. It looked almost controlled. Then Mike noticed the washer, a small steel washer sitting on the workbench near the field. For a fraction of a second it flickered. It did not move. It was not pulled by magnetism. It was there. Then it was gone. Then it was there again. Mike stopped breathing. He placed screws near the rods, coins, small pieces of metal. And every so often, when the laser, voltage, and field aligned in exactly the right way, the object would disappear. Only for a heartbeat. No flash, no bang, no visible movement. Just absence. A small, empty space where matter had been. Then, the object would return exactly where it had started, as if reality had corrected itself and hoped nobody noticed. But Mike noticed. The air smelled sharp with ozone, but something else lingered beneath it. Metallic, cold. Something that made his skin tighten and the hair on his arms rise. That was the night Mike Markham's life divided into 2 halves. Before the field and after it. He did not know what he had discovered, but he knew one thing. It was real, and he needed someone else to hear about it before he convinced himself he was losing his mind. The call. In January 1995, Mike Markham called Coast to Coast AM. The late-night radio show hosted by Art Bell had become a gathering place for the impossible. Strange disappearances, UFO encounters, secret experiments. Art had heard it all. But Mike did not sound like someone trying to entertain an audience. He sounded nervous, uncertain, like a man trying to explain something that still scared him. Art questioned him carefully. Could it be an optical effect? Could the arc be distorting the air? Mike's answer changed the mood of the call. He said he knew the objects were disappearing because he could feel the field whenever it happened. The garage changed, the air became heavy, the space seemed to stop. His dog refused to go near the building anymore. Birds stopped landing on the roof. Living things reacted before Mike completely understood what the field was doing. Art told him to document everything. Find witnesses. Record video. Write down the conditions. And stop treating this like a private garage experiment. But Mike did not stop. He pushed further. Over the next year, the experiments became more dangerous. In the summer of 1995, he stole 6 industrial transformers from a rural electrical substation and connected them to his setup. The power draw was enormous. Lights dimmed across nearby properties. A brownout spread through the area. Utility workers followed the surge back to Mike's garage. He was arrested. 60 days in county jail. For most people, that would have ended everything. For Mike, it became an incubation chamber. He spent the entire sentence drawing circuit designs, improving the layout, thinking about what he had done wrong. He came out more focused than ever. When he called Art Bell again, Art noticed the difference immediately. Mike was no longer excited. He sounded consumed. He said the objects were not simply flickering anymore. They were staying gone, seconds at a time. And when they returned, sometimes they were different. A wooden block disappeared for 3 full seconds. When it came back, it was cold, as though it had been somewhere else. A flower vanished and returned wilted and dry, as if it had lost days of life in only seconds. Then came the part that made Art Bell fall silent. Mike had tested the field on a mouse. The animal disappeared for 5 seconds. When it returned, it was alive, but spinning in circles, crashing against its cage, refusing to eat or drink. 2 days later, it died. Art told him to stop immediately. He needed real scientists, real oversight, people who understood the danger. There was silence. Then Mike said he could not stop now. He was too close. And the terrifying part is, he was right. He was close, but not to what he believed, the vanishing. In late February 1996, Mike made his final known call to Coast, and before everything changed. He said the field had expanded. It no longer affected only small objects. He could step partly into it himself. And when he did, time felt wrong. Everything outside the field seemed to slow. Movement stretched. Sounds changed. When he stepped back out, more time had passed than he had experienced. Art asked the obvious question. Had Mike built a time machine? Mike hesitated, then said he did not know. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was perception. Maybe it was reality itself. But whatever the field was doing, it was not simply moving objects. It was changing how they existed. Art tried once more to pull him back, but by then, Mike's paranoia had hardened. He believed people were watching him. Cars appeared near the house that he did not recognize. He thought the government knew. The call ended with a promise. He would call back in March. He would bring proof, video, measurements, everything Art had requested. That call never came. In March 1997, Mike Markham disappeared. His phone was disconnected. Letters were returned unopened. The farmhouse appeared deserted. Then, the garage burned. Investigators found the remains of the machine, melted copper, destroyed transformers. Scorch marks burned deep into the concrete. At the center of the floor was a circular burn pattern 6 aft wide. But there was no body, no bones, no answer, only the note inside the toolbox. It's not about time. It's about how you see things. The official case went nowhere. A missing person report was filed. The story slowly faded. But online, Mike Markham became a legend. Some claimed he had traveled into the future. Others said the government had taken him. Others believed the machine had opened a doorway and Mike had stepped through it. Then, in 1998, the legend became even stranger. An internet researcher discovered an old newspaper clipping from 1930. A body had washed up on a California beach, male early 30s, wearing clothes that looked strangely modern for the era. In the image shared online, people noticed something disturbing. It looked like something a 1990s garage experimenter could have built. Had Mike Markham traveled back to 1930 and died decades before he was born? There was no proof. Only a photograph, only a coincidence, only another shadow connected to a story already filled with them. Then in September 2006, the silence broke in a different way. Dr. Harold E. Puthoff, a physics professor at a small Oregon university, opened his email one Tuesday morning and froze. The sender said Mike Markham. The message was brief. Mike said people believed he was dead. He said he was not. But he also said he was not exactly here. He attached diagrams for something he called a third-generation vortex stabilization frame and warned Puthoff not to build it. Only study it. The attachments were far beyond anything Mike had described publicly. Circuit layouts, field equations, warnings about biological damage, and repeated exposure. Puthoff tried to respond. The email bounced. He traced the message to a public library in Kauai, Hawaii. No one there remembered seeing Mike. Another dead end. Another trace of a man who seemed to exist only in pieces. And then, 16 years later, Mike returned. Years later, they said the encounter feels like a movie they once watched late at night. They know it happened because the evidence remained. The journals, the Polaroid, the circuit boards, their own handwritten notes. But the experience of sitting with Mike Markham, listening to him speak, staring into his face, is almost entirely gone. That is what Mike called unmemory. Not forgetting, something deeper. A gradual erasure of someone's presence from the minds of those who meet them, while physical evidence of that person remains sitting in plain sight. And that is why the Mike Markham case is not really a story about time travel. It is about something far more frightening. What makes a person real? Is it their body, their name, their records, or is it the ability of other people to perceive them, recognize them, and carry them forward in their minds? Mike believed the machine shattered that connection. He did not die. He did not disappear into another century. He became impossible to hold on to. A face nobody can describe, a voice nobody can replay, a name that disappears the moment it is spoken. A living ghost moving through a world that keeps forgetting he exists. The Carters kept their promise. The journals were sent away. The attic was locked. Since then, there have been only scattered unverified sightings. A man resembling Mike asking strange questions in university physics departments. A conference attendee who introduced himself as Mike Markham, but whom no one could clearly remember afterward. A shelter resident with deep technical knowledge who left before anyone discovered much about him. Each sighting more uncertain than the last, each witness less confident. Not because Mike is hiding, but because if his story is true, the world itself can no longer hold him clearly. Somewhere, Mike Markham may still be walking through ordinary streets, standing in ordinary rooms, moving through lives that cannot keep him. Still alive, still present, still trying to leave enough evidence behind before the final thread breaks. The machine worked, but not the way he expected. It did not defeat time. It did not open the past or hand him the future. It removed the one thing no person can survive losing, the ability to remain real in the minds of others. Mike Markham did not discover a way to travel through time. He discovered a way to fall out of memory, and reality punished him for it. In October 2022, Andrew and Melanie Carter were renovating an old farmhouse in rural Ohio. While pulling insulation from the attic walls, Melanie's hand hit something solid behind the framing. A wooden box. Heavy, covered in dust, hidden where nobody would casually find it. On top was a faded handwritten label. M. Markham. Do not open until the right time. Inside were journals packed with notes, circuit diagrams, dates, and warnings stretching from 1995 to 2021. Circuit boards sealed in anti-static bags. and a Polaroid photograph showing a man standing beside a large ring-shaped metal frame. The date stamped on it, June 21st, 2021, on the back in the same handwriting. It did work. But not the way I thought it would. Then they discovered something even stranger. One of the journals contained the exact address of the farmhouse they now owned. Beside it, a note. Magnetic field stability optimal. Safe storage location. They will find it when the time is right. They posted about the box online. The story spread quickly. People who had followed the Markham case for decades began contacting them. 3 weeks later, Andrew's phone rang. No caller ID. The voice was older, worn down, exhausted, but to anyone who had heard the old coast-to-coast recordings, it was unmistakable. The man said he was Mike Markham. He said he had heard they found his box, and he asked if he could come and explain what happened. He arrived at the Carter farmhouse on a cold October evening. 59 years old, exactly the age he should have been if he had lived normally since 1997. But he looked older than that. Not just aged, drained, weathered in a way that did not seem entirely physical. Over the next several hours, he told them what he claimed had actually happened. He said he did not travel through time. Not in the way people imagined. The machine did not move him backward or forward. It desynchronized him. That was the word he used. He said he remained in the same world, the same places, the same sequence of events, but out of phase with everyone else. Like a radio tuned slightly away from the station. The music is there, but distant, fuzzy, difficult to hold. He described the night of the fire in March 1997. The third-generation machine stabilized. The field held. In a moment of reckless confidence, Mike stepped completely inside. There was no portal, no flash of light, no sensation of traveling through time, only a sickening silence as if the entire world shifted slightly and left him behind. When he stepped out, hours had passed. The machine had overheated. The garage caught fire. Mike escaped. But when he tried to return to his life, something was wrong. Friends recognized his face but could not remember his name. His landlord remembered renting to someone but could not connect that memory to him. Phone calls failed. Records became difficult. Conversations slipped from people's minds almost as soon as they happened. Mike told the Carters he had not disappeared. He had become difficult to perceive, difficult to remember, like the human mind could see him but could not hold on to him. And every time he exposed himself to the machine again, the effect became worse. He became a little less real to other people. Over the years, he drifted along the edges of society. Cash jobs, temporary rooms, places where nobody needed a paper trail and nobody would ask too many questions if they forgot him by morning. He kept studying the machine, and what he discovered terrified him. It had never been about time. It was about perception, memory, observation, the fragile process through which conscious beings confirm that another person exists. Mike believed the machine had broken that connection. A person is not just a body. A person is a pattern carried inside other minds. And Mike believed he had damaged his ability to be remembered. He said they could see him now. They could hear him. They could write down his words. But it was fragile, and it was getting worse. When the Carters asked why he had returned, Mike said he was running out of time. Not chronological time, memorable time. Soon he believed he would become completely present but unperceived. Alive, but impossible for the human mind to retain. Before he left, he asked them for 3 things. Send the journals to a private research archive. Lock the attic. Some equipment hidden there was still magnetically active. And never try to contact him again. Then he stood up, walked through the front door, and vanished into the night. This is the part Andrew and Melanie say they still cannot completely explain. The moment Mike left the house, they had to focus to remember his face. Not days later, immediately, his features started slipping away like water through fingers. The color of his jacket, the shape of his hands, the exact sound of his voice. Melanie grabbed a notepad and started writing as quickly as she could because she could feel the memory disappearing while it was still fresh. Andrew stood in the kitchen trying to remember the voice of the man who had been sitting across from him less than an hour earlier. He could not. Within an hour, they were reading their own notes like documents written by someone else. They recognized the handwriting, the paper, the coffee stain on the corner of the page, but the living memory behind the words had already started to fade. Within a week, they needed the notes to reconstruct the conversation at all.